Hello and welcome to chapter 5 of Angular Material Theming System. In this chapter, we are going to talk about using theme styles and customizing tokens. We are going to continue from where we end the last chapter, which was chapter 4, Dimension Density. So if you are following along, you don't have to clone the repository again or change the folder. You can continue in the same folder. Or if you want to start from scratch, make sure that you are in the end folder of previous chapter, which was chapter 4, dimension density, and run the npm start command in that folder. And then follow this chapter in that folder. Links for the repository and instructions for folders are given in the section below of this video. In this chapter, we are going to cover 7 topics. We will start with understanding system variables. Then we will modify toolbar and application colors using system variable. Then we will also modify applications typography using system variable. Then we will learn a couple of ways about how to customize tokens. And then we will implement those ways to customize add to do button and card component styles. Okay, let's start with our first chapter, which is understanding system variables. Angular material components depend on system variables defined as CSS variables through mat.theme Mixit. That means we can also use those CSS variables defined by mat.theme to apply Angular material themes, color, and typography to our application. So mat.theme mixin emits this set of CSS variables we saw in earlier chapters when we inspected car's background color and also the pre-built theme colors. We saw that the components were trying to read values for font, background, and borders from some set of CSS variables. Those are system variables in Angular material, and those are generated using mat.theme mixin, which we have present in our main style file. So, for example, we can create such style to create a application wide banner to represent some important information to the user. We can have a primary container as background. We can have on primary container as foreground. We can give some border and we can have a body large font from Angular material applied to the banner. So this is a very basic example. We are going to take a deep look into how all these properties are structured. Before diving into coding, we are going to spend a few minutes to understand Material 3 design's color roles, their purpose, and usage in Angular material. So, these are some general concepts with respect to material design. If you see a surface role in material design, that means that color is used in background and large and low emphasis areas of screen, like cards. If you see primary, secondary, tertiary, or error roles, they are the main colors used to emphasize or de-emphasize the foreground element. Container roles are used as filled color for foreground elements like buttons. Colors prefixed with on are used for text or icon color on top of its paired parent color. So, for example, uh, on primary container color will be used on an element who has primary container as a background color. For example, if you used matte filled button, then the background will be primary and the foreground will be on primary. So that is how this pairing works. So that is what is meant by paired parent color. Colors postfixed with variant are used in lower emphasis alternative to its non-variant pair. For example, we also have a system variable called outline in Angular material. And we also have a system variable called outline variant. So outline variant is a lower emphasis version of outline. So in Angular material, matte divider component uses outline color because it want to showcase the division between two sections of UI, correct? You can also use outline variant if you want to showcase a lower emphasis kind of differentiation between two sections of UI. We are going to focus on color roles used by Angular material. So Angular material mainly uses four roles. First is primary. Primary role is used in high emphasis fields and text, and in Angular material they are used as background color for field buttons and selected radio buttons, for example. And the CSS variable for that color is hyphen matte sys primary. The foreground color for primary role is on primary, and you will see it used as text or icon color on field buttons in Angular material. And you can access it using matte sys on primary. Next is surface role, and it is used as background color for the application and most of the components like dialog, card, table, and more. If you remember, we used this matte surface and matte sys on surface for our application's default background or foreground color. We created a class called app background, and there we added matte sys surface as background and matte sys on surface as color. Error rule is used to showcase error indicating urgency, and it is used as background color for patch and the text color for input field when it is invalid in Angular material. And foreground color for error variant is on error. Next up is outline rule. Outline rule is used to indicate boundaries. For example, in Angular material, it is used as color of divider and border of outline form field. There is a variant available for outline, which is mainly used for decorative elements. For example, border color of card. So these are all four rules which are highly used in Angular material. And these are the CSS variable syntaxes, matsys primary, matsys on primary, matsys outline variant, through which you can access this color rules. To see this color rules in action, let's go to our application and inspect some elements. So first of all, let's inspect this checkbox and see what colors it is using. So I'm going into MDC checkbox background, and if you see, border color is matte sys primary and background color is matte sys primary. Okay. Now, if I go into this SVG and check its color, you see color is matte sys on primary. So you are getting an idea, right? How on color and the main parent color, in this case primary and on primary, are used in pair in Angular material components. So they are used in pair to generate an accessible color combination. Let's take a look at one more example. We will inspect this button, and if you take a look at the color for this button label, it is matte sys primary. So this is how the color rules are used in Angular material. Apart from those four main color rules, there are few more color rules available as per Material 3 design guidelines, but they are less commonly used in Angular material. So these are all the CSS variables generated by Theme mixin apart from primary roles, but these are less commonly used in Angular material, like this secondary variants then tertiary variants. These are less commonly used, and there are also some more variants available for surface role. These are all the less commonly used CSS variables in Angular material. Then there are still more color roles available, and these are fixed color rules, and these are not at all used in Angular material, but these are available if we want to use them in our application to generate more variants. So these colors are generally postfixed with fixed word or have fixed word in them, and these CSS variables have the same color for light or dark theme, and these are not at all used in Angular material. Similar to colors, Angular material also generates system variables for typography. With respect to material 3 design guidelines, there are 5 categories of typography. These categories are named display, headline, title, body, and label. And all these font types have 3 sizes: large, medium, and small. And display and headline font types combinedly represents headings of an application. So if we talk about Angular material and web application, display and headline combinedly represent heading tags from H1 to H6. So display large represents H1, display medium represents H2, display small represents H3, and headline large, medium, and small represents H4, H5, and H6 tags. To get the typography in Angular material, we can keep some set of rules in mind to get the correct value of typography. So we saw in previous slide that there are 5 levels: display, headline, title, body, and label, and each has 3 size: large, medium, and small. And in CSS, to set fonts properly, we need to use these 6 properties, namely font, font family, font size, font weight, line height, and letter spacing. And Angular material emits CSS variable for each and every combination of label size and property. So for example, if you want to get the font family for display large, you would read hyphen hyphen mat sys hyphen display, then size large, and then for font family, you will use token font. So you will use this CSS variable mat sys display large to get the font. And font property contains all the properties: font family, font size, font weight, and line height, except letter spacing. So for letter spacing, you will need to individually add that CSS property. So for example, if we want to create a clone for display large, we can write a CSS class like this. We can add a font, and we can read from variable mat sys display large. And for letter spacing, we can add it individually, which is letter spacing, and variable is mat sys display large tracking. So you can keep this rule in mind to get the correct CSS variable for typography in Angular material. First, we will read level, then we will read size, and then we will read token for property. I will pause for a moment so you can read this map in your mind. Okay, so keeping all this knowledge of system variables, of colors and typography, now we are going to use this and modify colors and typography in our application. So let's jump to code. First, we will start by changing background and foreground color for matte toolbar. We will change it to use primary container so that it looks different than in our application background. So I will open up app component SCSS, and in matte toolbar, I will simply use this code for background. I am using matte sys primary container, and for color, I am using matte sys on primary container. And I will save this. And now, as you can see, the toolbar is more distinguishable than our application's background, and this looks much better now. Next, we want to give some border to this theme toggle component. So we will go to theme toggle style file, and there with host only, I will give outline. Wait, outline is already present below. Outline 1 pixel solid and a color. So instead of DEE to E6, I want to give hyphen hyphen matte sys outline variant. I will type matte sys outline variant, and I will save this, and we can see a subtle color is applied and it looks nice on the UI. Let me go to the browser so that you can see it properly. You can see over here, right? The subtle border color is applied through outline. Okay, next we are going to change some text color. So this to do does not have a due date, but let's add one. For example, I will simply type test to do, and I will add due date of tomorrow. I will add to do. So you can see the due date is added. Let's inspect that. And due date has a hard coded color of RGB 000 with 70% opacity. Instead of this, we want to use the default foreground color for this with opacity. So let's see how we can do that. So I'm going to close this. I will go back to the code, and I will go to list section component.scss. And here we want to change this color. Okay. Now for matte sys on surface, we can use matte sys on surface. Okay. So if I save this and go back to my browser and inspect it, you can see matte sys on surface is applied. But we also want to control uh, this color a little bit. We want to apply some transparency in it. Earlier we had 70% transparency and we were using RGBA. So we want to achieve similar behavior with matte sys on surface. So to do that, we are going to use a function of CSS, which is color mix. So color mix is a new CSS function introduced in 2023. The color mix functional notation takes two color values and returns the result of mixing them in a given color space by a amount. So we want to apply transparency of 70%. So we are going to use the syntax similar to this to apply transparency. So let's see how we can do that. So I will go back to my code, and here I will use color mix. I will use this on surface as my first color, and then I want to add transparent for 30% so that Maxis on surface has transparency of 70%. So I will save this. I will go back to my browser. Okay, seems something is not right. Oh yes, we did not follow the syntax in correct way. I will go back to my browser. We'll have to add in sRGB as first argument, and then we will save this. We will go back to the browser again, and now we can see the color has a reduced opacity or an increased transparency. Similarly, we want to also use the material design colors for the shadow. So if you see over here, CDK drag preview, which is added when we drag and drop any to-do card, we are using RGBA with zero point 0.2, zero point 0.14 and zero point 0.12 opacity. So we will use similar syntax of color mix and we will change the box shadow. So let's do that. So zero point 0.2, zero point 0.14 and zero point 0.12 will become 80, 86 and 88. And I am using matte shadow uh, for CSS variable. So I will save this. Let's go back to uh, browser. And if I drag and drop, yeah, shadow is getting applied. Okay. Next up is the empty state. If we go into our application, we want to change the colors of this because now, as of now, those are hard coded. So if I switch to dark mode, you we can barely see it. So I'll switch to light mode and then I will go to to-do list component.scss and I will find out empty state. Here we have color with zero point 0.6 opacity. So again, we will use color mix over here with 40% transparency. I will save this. Icon's color is now using material design color. And for this header, uh, completed tasks header, we want to use color mix for its color also. I will go to the same CSS file. We have color over here. We are going to override it with color mix. And even for border, we want to use border color from material design. So I'm going to use Maxis outline variable. I will save this. Let's go to browser. So now colors are using material design colors. We need to give 1px solid for border. Yes, we can see the border now. Okay. Next, we are going to use system variables for typography, and we will use that in our empty state because that is not wrapped inside any Angular material component. So they do not follow Angular materials typography. So let's do that. Let's go back to code again. And in the same file, in empty state, I'm going to add font and letter spacing for H2. So I will remove font weight and I will add font as mat display small. And for letter spacing, I'm adding mat sys display small tracking because this font contains everything except letter spacing. So for letter spacing, we will have to add property separately. Okay, similarly, we want to make changes for paragraph tag. So for paragraph tag, I'm going to use title system variables, title small and title small tracking. Let's save this. So now this header and this title follow Angular Materials typography pattern, which is more aligned to our other Angular Material components. Let's also change the font for completed header. So I will add font of title small and letter spacing of title small, and I will save this. Let's go back to the browser. We can see now completed tasks uses the font from Angular Materials typography. So you can see over here, it uses mat this title small and mat this title small tracking. Okay, so after these changes, modifying colors and typography using system variables, now our application is more aligned toward material design, and places where we are not using Angular material component, those places are also using system variables, so they look more aligned with other Angular material components. On top of that, for empty state, now when we change to dark theme, colors are pretty much aligned because we are using CSS variables. So until now, we learned how to read system variables and how to use them in our components. But Angular Material also provides an override mixin through which we can customize specific tokens. So Angular Material provides two ways to customize the token. One is overriding system tokens. Another one is overriding component tokens. To override system token, we can use mat.theme overrides mixin, or we can pass an extra map of overrides along with our map in mat.theme mixin. And for component tokens, we can use mat.component name dash overrides mixin. So for example, for card, we can use mat.car overrides mixin. One of the advantage of using overrides API is that it validates these tokens, elevated container color or primary container. It validates these tokens and modifies them only if the tokens are correctly spelled, so that it ensures backward compatibility. For example, if these tokens are added, moved, or renamed in future version, we can easily migrate them over if we are using these mixins. For component tokens, Angular Material team has also added a section in their documentation for each and every component where you can see which token to override. So if I talk about card, let's take a look at the cards documentation on Angular Materials website. There they have added styling tab. This is added for all the components. There they are showing an example how to use the mixin and what are all the tokens available and what are the default values for those tokens. You can also filter the tokens by base, color, typography, and density. So this is a really helpful way if we want to achieve granular customizations for any Angular material component. Okay, so until now, we saw there is a mat.theme mixin, there is a mat.theme overrides mixin, there is mat.card override or component overrides mixin. So it can become confusing when to use what. So I have prepared a little summary which should help you to make decision which mixin you should use when and ideally how many times. So look at this diagram. First, we have mat.theme mixin. We started with this. And this mixin generates all the tokens. And this is usually used to apply theme for your application. And this should be used once per theme. And ideally, you would need to use this only once in your whole application, unless you want to create a new theme like a indicator theme or a banner theme, which you are going to use to highlight a separate section in your application, then you may want to use method theme again. But ideally, you will want to use this once, and ideally, it scopes whole application. Next is mat theme overrides. You will want to use this when you want to override only specific tokens from mat.theme. You don't want to generate all tokens again, but you want to just override specific set of tokens from generated tokens. In that case, you can use mat theme overrides mixing. Example, a success theme written with green color. So to create a success theme, what you would do, you will just override primary tokens using theme overrides, and you will have a success theme available with you. You can use primary container, on primary, etc. tokens to get the success theme further in your application. So this equals to a contextual theme in your application where you just want specific tokens to be overridden. And this ideally has a lesser scope when compared to mat.theme. Next is component overrides. This generates tokens only for components and only the tokens which you provide. And this helps you achieve granular customizations in a component. For example, in a specific section, if you want to have card of zero border radius, you can achieve that using component override only for that section. Or emphasize the button's color to indicate a newly added feature like chatting with AI. If you want to highlight that button, you can achieve that. And you can use that as and when needed because it has a very specific scope. So this will only generate needed component and only for that specific component. Now, using concept of component overrides, we will modify the styles for add to do button. I'll go to the browser once. So in this add to do button, what we want to do, we want to override its border radius to be 100% so that it's a circular button. And we also want to use tertiary color palette over here. So let's see how we can do that. I will go to app.component.scss where we already have a class for add to do fab. So I'm going to include the fab overrides mixin. So first of all, we will need to import Angular material so that we can use those mixin. I'm going to import that. Then I'm going to include mat.fab overrides. Then I'm overriding container shape. Then I'm overriding container color, foreground color and state layer color to match with tertiary. So I'm going to save this. And as you can see, the color is now changed. Let's go to the browser. You see color is now changed and also shape is also changed. So the tokens which we modified are the valid tokens and they are being referenced from Angular materials documentation. Let me show you that. So instead of card, we'll go to button. In button, there is a separate section for fab overrides. So fab overrides, and we wanted to override colors. So ideally, we would filter the color part and then override the tokens which we want to change. Okay. Next, we want to make changes in this chips component for priorities so that user can easily identify which are low, medium, and high priority to-dos As of now, all of those have same color, so it's not easily distinguishable. We want to make it easier for end user. By just looking at it, they can identify what is the priority of the task. So let's do that. So I will go back to my code and I will open up to-do list section.component.scss. In that, first, let's import Angular material so that we can use mixins. Next, we'll scroll down to the end. Next, we will create a map of priority colors like this. So this is the map named priority color, where I have nested map for each and every priority, low, medium, and high. We learned the basics of map in the very first chapter, where we saw how maps are useful to generate dynamic classes and how everything is used in Angular material. So here what I'm doing, for lower priority, I want to use outline color of primary. For background, I want to use surface container, and for foreground, I want to use on surface container. For medium, I want to use secondary as outline color and secondary containers and on container variant for background and foreground. And for high, I want to use error colors. Now, I will create classes using iteration in SCSS. So here what is going on? I'm iterating over each and every property of priority color, and I am storing its key in dollar priority and value in dollar color. Then I'm creating a dynamic class dot priority chip dot priority and then the priority. So it will be dot priority chip dot priority low dot priority chip dot priority high and dot priority medium. So this loop will help us create these classes. Then I'm simply using background color property of CSS and I'm getting the color background from colors map. Then I'm using chip overrides mixin to override colors of chip and I'm overriding outline and label text color. Now note that there is no token for background color in Angular material chip and hence I'm directly using the CSS property. Now instead of map-get in latest version of SAS, uh, another approach is used. Let me show you that. So instead of map-get, we can also use map.get. But to use map.get, we will need to use SAS map module. So in the latest version of SAS map, this is the new way which one needs to use, and gradually map-get is going to be deprecated. So for now, I will use map.get, but in some of my code snippets in repository, you will find map-get, which works, but in future version of SAS, it is going to be deprecated. Okay, I will save this. So we got the classes generated, but we also need to make some changes in template so that this classes gets applied with priority. Let's do that. So I will go to-do list section component.html, and with matchip over here, we want to use the priority class. So I'm going to use the class property binding and I'm going to change it like this so that it always have priority chip class, and then I'm adding priority hyphen to do dot priority. Let's save this. Let's go back to our browser. So we can see medium priority chips have the colors applied. Let's add lower and higher priority to test it. I will give this low priority. and I will give this high priority. You can see high priority has a background color of error container and lower priority has surface background color. So now user can directly look at the task and from color easily identify which are high, medium, and low priority tasks. So this brings us to the end of this chapter. To recap, we started with general concepts of material design, uh, what these terms mean, surface, primary, secondary, container, on, variant, what these terms mean. Then we took a look at what are all the primary color roles and variants used in Angular material. Primarily or mainly, primary surface, error, and outline color roles are used in Angular material component. Then we took a look at some of the color roles which are less commonly used in Angular material. And these were all the color rules which are less commonly used. And then we also took a look at the color rules which are not at all used in Angular material. So color rules which have word fixed in them, those are not used in Angular material and they have same value for light and dark. Then we understood what are all the system variables available for typography and what are all the terminologies available according to Material 3 design. So we have 5 type scale levels and each type scale level have 3 sizes. And Angular materials mat.theme mixin generate CSS variable or system variable for each and every combination. So for level size and each and every property, Angular materials mat.theme mixin generates CSS variables using tokens. So for display large clone, one could use a CSS code like this. So property can use display large CSS variable without any token because it doesn't need any token and it contains font family, font size, font weight, and line height. And for letter spacing, we can separately include that property. Later, we saw how we can use overrides mixin. So there were 2 ways. First using overriding system tokens and next using overriding component tokens. For system tokens, again, there are 2 ways. We can use theme overrides mixin, or we can also pass a map of overrides in mat.theme mixin. But I like mat.theme overrides because it's very specific and it helps us read the code better. And second was component token. So component tokens, we can use mat.component override. So for card, we can use card overrides. And next, we saw a summary of when to use which mixin and what should be the ideal scope and usage of each and every mixin. And then we used all this knowledge, we implemented this in our application to modify colors, typography, and override styles for fab and card component and also chip component. That's it for this chapter, and I will see you in the next one. Bye bye.